This episode of Gather and Go is brought to you by Huntsville, Alabama. This city delivers with no filler or fluff. It has a bold local art culture, a standout food scene, and immersive experiences you can't find anywhere else. Visit huntsville.org to see what you've been missing. All right, everybody. My guest today is a veteran tour director who has leveraged her experience guiding trips to create her own tour companies. After decades leading student groups on trips in the U.S. and abroad, she and her husband launched Tour DC with Us and Va Feltre Tours, taking groups of all ages on trips throughout the U.S., Italy, and other European destinations. Lorna Holland, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
I am so excited to have you here. Your life is fascinating to me. I've always been fascinated by the lives of tour directors because, so many people, I'm sure you've met people your whole life who say, oh, you have the most amazing job. So that's fascinating. And then I'm fascinated by tourism entrepreneurs. So we have a lot to talk about. Do you get that question a lot? You have the most amazing job in the world?
Yes. Actually, when I became a tour director, I wrote out an email saying to everybody, oh my gosh, I finally found my career. Everybody should be a tour guide. And then I very quickly realized that not everybody should be a tour guide.
It's not for everybody, but if it's for you, wow, what a way to earn a living. It's pretty incredible. Yeah. Tell us your story. How did you find your way into tourism?
So I went to college at Old Dominion University down in Norfolk, Virginia, and I was working at Starbucks, and this guy used to come into my Starbucks and kind of set up office. So, he'd come in, have his laptop and 5,000 papers, come in for a few days, leave. Come in for a few days, come back a week or so later, come in for a day or two, leave again. And after 6, 8 months, a year, I was like, how do I know your drink and I know who you are, but you're not actually a regular?
Yeah.
And he's like, you know what? I'm a tour director. You should think about doing this. And I was like, I'm getting a marketing degree. That's not a real job. I can't do this. So he came back with this packet, like this whole packet of papers. And it talked about a tour school in California. And at the time, I was getting ready to pack up and go back to Australia. I'd been an exchange student in Australia. I had always said I was going to go back. And so I did. I got rid of all my stuff. I packed up most of my stuff and either sold it, took it to my mom's, whatever. And I went to Australia. I came back and couldn't get a job right away. So I ended up managing a different coffee shop in Northern Virginia. And a different gentleman came in and he's like, you're not supposed to be here. We need to find you a job. And I was like, okay. So he comes back 2 days later. He goes, do you know there's a tour school in California? And I was like,
kidding me.
That's what that guy was talking about. And I had put everything either in storage or in boxes or whatever. And the one thing that I had never put away was the envelope from the guy. And it was in my drawer next to my bed. And, so I went into it and it was all this information about ITMI, the International Tour Management Institute in California. So I'm a certified tour director. Yeah. So I did that and, they sell you this dream that you're going to take over the world as a tour guide. And when I led my first tour, I was like, oh, I did that. And then when I started leading the tours in Europe, I was like, I'm doing it. And then one day my teacher from ITMI actually needed to train with me on a tour. And I was like, that's it. I've come full circle.
Wow. That is
but
amazing.
My first year leading tours, I was in the National Cathedral and I saw a gentleman all the way at the end of the cathedral. And I was like, there's no way. And I ran up to him and I was like, Daryl. And he's like, yeah. And I was like, Daryl, do you know who I am? And he goes, yeah. And I go, do you know why I'm here? And he kind of looked at me and I go, I'm here because of you.
Wow.
I listened to you and I went to ITMI and I'm a tour director too.
So. That is incredible. I mean, what are the chances that two different tourism professionals would find you in two different coffee shops and basically tell you you're made for this?
Yeah, I figured that was probably my sign. I was willing to listen at that point.
Listen, whatever you believe about higher powers, if it's the universe telling you, if it's the voice of God, it was something.
Right.
It was something. That is absolutely incredible. So obviously you enjoyed the work. How long did it take for you to go from like, okay, this is cool to like, yeah, this is it for me. This is my career.
3 hours, maybe 4. No, actually, my very first tour was very difficult, and I had all of that trepidation and nervousness even when I finished the tour. My first tour, they interviewed me at ITMI. There were about 6 or 8 of us who got interviewed right away. I was sent to Florida in the middle of 3 hurricanes, Charlie, Ivan, and Jean.
Wow.
And part of my itinerary was wiped out. My colleague who was working alongside me had a different hotel. His hotel was washed out to sea. So I'm just like, well, I don't really know if this is for me.
They did not cover this in my classes.
Student tour, I knew that I was good. I was fine.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. So you love student tours. I mean, you kind of developed a specialty working with students. What made that segment in particular so special to you?
I think first of all, if you're going to work with the students, you have to want to work with the students. I have fun with them. I joke and run and play and do all the same crazy things that they do. I like to think of myself more of a camp counselor, not a teacher, not a parent. And I think they appreciate that. And I think that as soon as you lose that desire to be connected to the kids, you shouldn't be with them.
Yeah. Wow. That's really insightful. Give us some examples of some of those things that you have found yourself doing with student groups that, you know, a parent or a teacher might be like, yeah, I'm not doing that. But you're like, yeah, let's go. This is fun.
Well, I do skip and do the Wizard of Oz with the kids. I don't think a lot of parents don't usually join me for that. But I think also it's meeting the kids where they are. You know, if it's, I've had kids ask me questions about January 6th. I've had kids ask me questions about 9/11. I mean, they're going to ask a question about a place where you are or about the subject matter of that place. And it's a matter of talking to them like a person, not talking down to them and not lecturing them for 16 hours and letting them be a part of the conversation that I think gets lost sometimes.
Yeah. Wow, that makes a lot of sense. Okay. So after a long time of freelance tour guiding, tour directing, you're working for a bunch of different companies.
Yeah.
You saw an opportunity to branch out and together with your husband, start your own company, your own couple of tourism brands. What was the inspiration for that?
So I had a teacher friend who said, you've been doing this for years. You've been leading trips. Would you be willing to lead a trip for our school? Would you want to be our tour operator? And Dante and I sat down and had a frank conversation with each other. Can we do this? Do we know what it takes to run the tour? Do we know what it takes to book the tour? And we decided that we did. So I think having somebody who believed in us helped us believe in ourselves, and the skills that we already had really just kind of had to branch out to create the booking process and work with the parents and work with the teachers, the outside kind of cogs of the wheel that we'd never really had to deal with before. But it was a pretty natural transition. Yeah, that was for the student tour. I don't know if you want to talk about the ladies tour or not, because that one was a little different.
Yeah, we'll get there in a minute. I want to ask about the role that your, collaborative relationship with your husband played. Do you think if you didn't have Dante there, working alongside you, that you would have said, yeah, sure, I'll be your tour operator? Or was that support a pretty critical thing for you?
I think I might have taken that one school, but I don't know that I would have grown into an entire company. Dante and I both have our degrees, but we have degrees in different subjects, and they mesh exactly where they need to. So I have the marketing degree. I have the business degree. I do the sales side. I do the numbers. I write up the logistics of the tour. But then if you go on the website, Dante's the one who does our videos. He's the one who does our marketing online. He's the one who designed the website. I go through and make sure that the English is straight, but he goes through to pick the graphics and make all the little images I don't know how to do any of that kind of stuff. So I think that both of us came with the skills necessary to really put it together. He deals with the registration system. I mean, I can go in and I can edit somebody's payment, but setting it up from the very beginning, we both kind of came in with those backgrounds that were necessary. So we're definitely a team.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You mentioned, there are different skills involved in planning trips, working with vendors, accepting payments. All the administration is very different than, being on the motor coach, leading a group, making sure they have a good time. What were some of those skills that you had to learn early on? Maybe that you knew you were going to have to, or maybe some that surprised you that you were going to have to pick up when you started doing your own tours?
I think one of the biggest headaches that come with booking tours is the whole component of booking hotels. I had this great conversation with one of my hotel sales ladies in January. We spoke for probably an entire hour, booked the groups, talked about what we needed, talked about the upgrades in her properties, talked about sales in general, how things were going. I think we learned the names of our kids, hung up the phone. And then I spent the next 3 weeks writing to her going, where's my contract?
Oh.
And so it's like, everything's fine. She calls me back. Oh, of course I have your rooms. The contract's fine, whatever. And I'm like, yeah, but you have to send it to me. And we have it's not her. There are other properties. We call these people. We're like, hey, we'd like to pay you. Oh, sure. Let me send you a credit card authorization form. 10 days later, can I have the form? Like, I spend more time tracking down hotels than I do leading the actual tour. So that's part of it, is learning how far out you have to book things and the lead time that it takes to get something that you think is so easy accomplished. And then kind of the nuances. You might have one restaurant who wants you to can you send me a list of the 8 groups that you have that want to eat with us this spring? And another one who says, I want 1 email per school. So you kind of have to learn the nuances of each of the sales agents you're dealing with.
Yeah. So it's really, you got a dozen relationships or a few dozen relationships you're managing in destinations all over the world. And you can only automate that so much, right? I mean, a lot of it is still, person to person.
Exactly. And I think something to be careful with is, when somebody says, okay, I want a place to eat in Washington, D.C. or anywhere on tour, it doesn't matter. I want a place to eat. You end up kind of pigeonholing yourself in sort of like, okay, Monday is hamburgers, Tuesday's pasta, Wednesday's tacos, whatever. And then you try to think outside the box, and that gets difficult. You don't want to reinvent the wheel, but you don't want to do the same thing over and over again. So that's something to try to keep ahead of.
So where do you go for those ideas?
Sometimes in my own stomach. It's sometimes talking with my passengers on a current tour, thinking ahead to, okay, when I do this next year, what do I want to do? So it may be May. I may be at the end of a tour season already thinking, what do I want to do for next year? But then I'll ask them, hey guys, what did you think about these restaurants? What did you think about the variety? Do you think we could throw sushi into the mix? Oh no, everybody's not going to eat that. Or sure, if it's one of those hibachi places that has everything else, So I use my customers, I use my guests as kind of a bouncing board.
Are you asking these questions to the group leader, the educator, the parent, or the students, or kind of
all of them? Because they all matter. I have a group in Alexandria, and we went to the German restaurant in Alexandria, and they put out a great spread for us. It was wonderful food. They had sausages and sauerkraut and 6 types of mustard and potatoes and potato salad and vegetables and all of that. And the kids hardly ate. Oh. So sure, all of the adults were happy, but there were 38 people on the tour and only 5 people ate. Oh, so gosh. You have to ask everybody.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. So you get the student groups going, and then you see this opportunity to serve groups of women, multi-generational groups, all ages groups of women.
Yes.
How did that come about? Tell us about that brand and what you're doing with it.
So that's my Vafeltre brand. So we have a little bit more of Tour DC with us in the States and a little bit more of Vafeltre over in Italy. My husband is Italian. I always joke around that he's my souvenir. I brought him through customs. Again, it was one of the teachers on tour with me who asked, would you be able to take my sisters and our adult daughters around Italy? And I was like, I think so. And I said, Dante, can we do this? And he said, we've always said we wanted to. We never quite knew how to do it. Let's go. And they asked me, at first they said, it's okay if you want to sell it out. And, you know, if you offer it to other people, we understand it's a game of numbers and the price will come down. She said, but can you make it just ladies? And I was like, oh, just ladies is a thing. I can do that too. So, this was pre-COVID. I was one of the first groups out there doing the ladies only on such a small scale. So that's where my ladies only Italy tours came from. And little by little, I'm actually expanding out. So it's not just Italy. I have Austria, Germany, Croatia, Slovenia, Greece, and I'm moving on to Australia and Africa over the next 5 to 7 years as well.
Yeah, very cool. So, you know, obviously the demographics are different between your student product and your ladies only product. How much of the operation is different? How much do you have to plan differently? How different is the experience on the trip when you're working with these really different demographics?
So one of the things that I've found with small group travel, if I have a large group of ladies, then it sort of isn't that different of a dynamic. But when I have a small group, let's say 8 or fewer people, I have definitely found that trying to pre-package the meals. So, okay, we're going to have all lunches and dinners included doesn't work anymore. Restaurants aren't going to give you group rates for that. So then you have one lady who very happily ordered a caprese salad with just tomato, mozzarella, and basil, and somebody else who ordered a steak. And one is sitting there saying, well, why am I paying for the other one? So now I'm trying to find restaurants that will take us with reservations, but in Europe, that will also let us pay separately. And that's not always easy to do. So that I think was one of my hardest things to kind of overcome. Trying to find the food is important, and it is absolutely true that you can eat badly in Italy. So I have found the restaurants where I like the food, but the treatment of my customers and being able to pay separately when necessary are the things that I'm looking for that have become my challenge.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Do you find that with the ladies only groups, let me back up. Student tours, like many adult tours, there's some built-in expectations. You know, there's going to be a certain number of included meals. You know, that's part of the value of what we're paying for. And that creates the conflict you were talking about where you go to an included meal and people are wanting things of different values. Do the people on the ladies only tours also bring those expectations with them? Or are they much more flexible about, yeah, I don't care whether I pay it up front to your company or whether I pay it as I go. I
As
just
long
want
as I
great food.
eat.
Yeah.
I think that when you're getting down to the small group travel, people start realizing that they're not just paying for quantity, they're paying for quality. So if you want to go to the Sistine Chapel, you can go to the Sistine Chapel with 8 people, or you can go to the Sistine Chapel with 48 people. The ceiling will look the same. If the room is crowded, the room is crowded. It doesn't matter. Right. But your experience for the entire trip is different when you have smaller groups. So I think that the people who are looking for smaller groups understand. I try to be as transparent as possible why I don't include every single meal, why we take the train between Rome and Florence, Florence and the Dolomites, instead of, having a big bus, why we use smaller forms of transportation or even walk, depending on our hotel, in the big cities. Because again, you're looking for something where you're trying to economize something smaller, but you're trying to get a bigger experience out of it.
Yeah. Those economies of scale are such a critical part of group travel. When you do smaller groups, the cost is higher, right? How do your customers react to that? Do they understand that they're paying more for the smaller experience, or are they comparing you to what they can get from a travel agent who would just sell them into a big retail bus tour?
I get both because I am the tour operator and the tour guide. I have them from the moment of the first email or phone call all the way to them going through security at the airport at the very end of their trip. So I speak to the people who don't sign up for my tours. People who will say, oh, well, I could absolutely do this trip cheaper. I don't need to go through you. I don't see how you could be asking that much money. And I'm like, I just put this together. I mean, I hang up the phone. I'm not saying it to them, but I just put this together. I have absolutely every idea of how much this costs, and I don't think you can do it cheaper on your own. I'm not saying that I'm budget travel, but I'm not getting massively rich off of these. So I think it's hard for people to see some of these brochures that'll say travel to Europe for $1,900 for 9 days and up. And then when you get to the and up, you realize, oh, that was for a January departure that magically canceled. When you get to August, it's already gone up 4,000, and what's not included? Right. You can't go to Paris and not go to the Eiffel Tower. You can't go to Rome and not go to the Colosseum. You can't go to New York and not go to the Statue of Liberty. Those are included for me because they should be. So it's hard to get people to understand what an all-inclusive package is versus these other tailored piecemeal packages.
Yeah. A lot of operators who have been in the business, say 20 or 30 years, they have a pricing paradigm based on a full motor coach, right? In the US, that might be like 48 passengers, something along that size. And it's profitable if you can sell 40 to 48 of those seats. If it's under 40, well, then maybe we have an issue. With a small group, there's a lot about that paradigm that breaks down, that doesn't make sense. So, I heard you mention, well, we take the train, or we may do public transportation. Do you have some other sort of hacks or workarounds that you use with those small groups to keep the price from just ballooning, to levels that a customer would find unappealing?
There's not a lot more that I can do, because if the group goes too small, they're not even getting group pricing. So maybe a group rate was 16 and a regular rate is 20. They may have to pay that 20 because there were only 6 people on the tour and it takes 10 to make a group rate. So sometimes I can't overcome it. And I think that the big, many people have told me that what Dante and I are selling is not necessarily the tour. We're selling ourselves. And we have to have, from that initial click or email or phone call or face on the street, from that moment, they have to realize that they're buying us and not just buying the Sistine Chapel or the Statue of Liberty or the Washington Monument.
Yeah, that's so insightful. Do you ever think about, say 10, 20 years down the road, your brands are going gangbusters, your calendar is as full as you want it to? No, it's fine. So do you ever think about, if your calendar is full, if everybody wants you, if you are part of the product, how do you scale that? Or is it something you even want to scale? Or do you say, you know what, we're really happy doing, X number of tours a year, and that's a sustainable lifestyle for us, and we're just going to enjoy life this way?
So in other words, what you're asking is to find out one of our marriage arguments, because Dante's like, we're going to be bigger, better than before. And I'm like, no, we're not. So, and I take arguments. I don't really mean arguments, but
Sure.
It has been one of our debates. How big do we want to be? We have friends who have taken tour companies and they have over 100 tours a year, and they have, offices and staff, and they're working now 365 days a year. I don't want to work 365 days a year. I joke around that we're semi-retired because we don't work the entire year. So in order to keep that kind of lifestyle, in order to have, I just had an entire month off to sit and do things in the office, but go hiking when I want to, have a coffee when I want to have that kind of lifestyle, you can't grow but so large. So
Yeah.
it's a matter of figuring out, okay, we need to make this bundle of money to pay our bills every year and survive in the lifestyle that we have become accustomed to. How many passengers do we have to have, whether it's in the school groups, in the ladies group? What do we need to do to come up with this pile of money without ruining our way of life? So it's been a delicate balance. Definitely an economy of scale matters. So, having a 3 or 4 bus move in the United States with the students will pay me more than working for another tour operator for 3 or 4 days. But how much do I want to be away from home? I have a daughter. I have a husband. He has a wife. He has a daughter. Yeah. It's always a question.
That's something that resonates with me a lot. We have children of a similar age, and I think very often about how much I'm on the road and whether I'm being the kind of father I want to be. And, I think I am, I hope I am, but it's always tough when I'm packing on a Saturday night and my kids are looking at me saying, Dad, do you really have to go this time? What are some ways that you and Dante have figured out to have the quality family life you want to have, be the parents and spouses you want to have, but also be tourism entrepreneurs?
So one of the things for us has been bringing Arlie on tour with us. In fact, last summer, I actually had a family who said, we're bringing our teenage daughters, bring your daughter along. That was perfect. She never had to be away from mama. She was there the whole time. But that can't happen all the time. When she was little, she was more portable. We used to pay nannies to come and take care of her in the spring, which is our busiest time of year. And I would have the nanny come, especially when she was tiny, I would have the nanny come and spend the night in the hotel with me. I was usually downtown DC, 6-8 miles away from the house, but I couldn't go home at night because I had a group. So the easy thing, bring the baby to me. I don't have to go to baby. Baby sees me every day. She gets to come down to breakfast. If I finish early, she gets to see me. She can come to the museum. She can come to Mount Vernon. It was great. Then school hits. Now you can't just pick her up and move her whenever you want to anymore. So in the fall, for example, I had a tour where one of my ladies' tours, we were in Florence. We came up here to the Dolomites. We went to Venice. And the way the days worked out, Dante picked up Arlie at noon. They went down, they caught the 2:00 train, came down to Florence for the weekend, hung out with me, and then came back for the week. We came up to the Dolomites. They came and hung out with me. And the next weekend hit, they came to Venice with me. So it lets her kind of have some of that travel lifestyle as well. And hopefully keeps us from being separate for too long.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you figured out a way. It's non-traditional. There wasn't a playbook. It wasn't like, well, I'll just do what my mom did, right? But you figured out a way. What would you say to other young women, young parents, people who are tour directors, or who say, well, maybe could I own my own company one day? What would you encourage them about figuring out the future they want to have in spite of the hurdles in their way?
Yeah, it's actually something that I've thought about with some of the kind of guide meetups or conventions that I go to, that there's never a talk about pregnant moms or families. It could be the man, it could be the woman, it doesn't matter. But whoever the tour guide is, support for our tour guide families. When I got pregnant in 2014, I don't think we had a pregnant tour guide in DC in at least a dozen years. And right after, we had about 3 or 4 more. And now there's kind of been a fall off. Some of the men have actually their spouses have had children. So there are a few young parents, but I was sort of the first. It's difficult because we feel, you said it yourself, like we feel that guilt from the separation. So we have the flexibility of being able to kind of pick where we are. So if I'm leading more tours in the States, I try to have her in the States with me. If I'm leading tours in Italy, I try to have her in Italy with me. Then at least we don't feel like we're quite so far away. And the two of us have the ability to, Dante's about to go on tour for a month. He'll come back. I'll go on tour for a month. So one of us is always home. So she has kind of the stability of her school life that way.
Yeah. How do you and Dante maintain a healthy marriage when, it's a month here, a month there?
I think it's the same as with parenting. I mean, without video and FaceTime and all of the technology that we have, I imagine it would be much harder. One of the things that I really took to heart when I was pregnant and I was thinking about how I'm going to leave this baby, I came across the blogs from Combat Moms. And these women talking about having to go overseas. This is 2014. So there were women being sent to the Middle East in the middle of bombings and everything. And, not knowing when they say goodbye to their family, if they're coming back to their family in one piece or as the same person. And it really gave me perspective that if women like that could go and defend our country, I can go on a tour and figure out how to still be a mom.
Wow. Great perspective. It's hard to put it in better relief than that. Lorna, what's the best way for people to learn more about you, your companies, connect with you, follow what you do?
Dante, of course, has created a YouTube channel for us. So we have lots of videos on there. He's been taking this semi-retired time on the computer, making a whole lot of videos. We have Instagram, Facebook. I'm old, so I'm on the Facebook. And, of course we have our website. You can call me anytime. I love to talk, as you can see. So there's several ways to get in touch with us: phone call, email, Facebook, Instagram, whatever medium works for you, it works for us as well.
Yeah. And you guys are available for preformed groups that want custom tours, right? They can reach out to you for.
Absolutely. It's slightly easier for me because I don't have people coming from all different destinations. I know that everybody is going to touch ground at the same time and everybody's going to get on the same airport or same airplane and leave. So I love preformed groups. It's just a little bit less work for me. But absolutely, I love putting the trips together and getting to know my people along the way.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, before I let you go, we have some questions we ask everybody, and these are just for fun, so no pressure. Just answer off the top of your head. When you book travel, are you booking a window seat or an aisle seat?
I'm a window.
Yeah. What about?
Although I'm not allowed to anymore because now Dante and Arlie fight over the window, so I just get on the plane. But when it's just me, I'm a window.
Yeah, it's funny when it's me with the family. Laura says, "Okay, you put yourself in the row of 3 with the 2 kids. I'll be across the aisle from you."
Yeah,
doing my own thing.
Smart woman.
Yeah, she is. So what's one thing in your carry-on you wouldn't travel without?
I'm assuming money and phone are in my pocket, so something else.
Yeah.
Something I wouldn't travel without. Money, phone, and keys. I'll go out and just do a tour with that. What else in my backpack? I guess a pen?
That's a great tip because there are so many times where it would be helpful to have a pen. And if you haven't packed one, I mean, I see people all the time, on international flights, it's time to fill out the form. And they're like, well, I don't have a, stewardess, can I have a pen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Very common. If you had a free airline pass and a week with nothing else to do, where would you be headed next?
Can I have just barely more than a week?
Yeah, you can have 2 if you want.
I've been itching for just some place with just blue water, which granted, I go to the Amalfi Coast, so that's okay, but I want to go somewhere different. So,
Yeah.
I just have this image of like Tahiti with the huts over the water. So I think I would go there.
Not a bad choice at all. Last question. Well, shoot. I've asked this question 100 times and I just blanked on it. All right. Last question. What's one thing you have seen or done on the road that you wish you could go back and experience again with somebody you love?
They go on tour with me.
Yeah.
What's something that I've done? Oh gosh, I have my they haven't been to Amalfi with me.
Mm.
I think that's something I would love to have them come down. And Capri, I think, is one of the most magical places in the entire world. If there are mermaids, they definitely have swum around that island. Wow. I think, I would like Arlie to come. I would love both of them to come with me to Capri and go on the chairlift that goes from Anacapri up to Monte Solare. Where I always, whatever group I have, we always toast my mom when we go up there because it's her favorite place in the whole world, and she's probably not going to make it back there. So I think, the chairlift at Monte Solare and going up to the top of Capri.
Yeah. Wow. Well, listen, one of these semi-retired months that you all have, maybe you just need to plan a little family trip and make it happen. That sounds absolutely wonderful.
It's a great day. It's February. I have the wrong month off.
Yeah. We'll put it on the bucket list. Sooner or later, you'll make it happen, I'm sure. Awesome. Well, Lorna, thanks so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Hey, thanks so much for joining us for this interview. I want to let you know that conversations like this are just part of what you will hear if you tune into a full episode of the Gather and Go podcast. When you listen, you'll get travel news you may not hear anywhere else, along with some really helpful road tips, some smart analysis, and maybe even a hot take from me about issues that are impacting travel right now. Now, you can hear this full episode along with many others by searching for Gather and Go in your favorite podcast player, or you can click on the link right below this video or one of the videos right here to my side. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.